Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maninder Singh. I'm one of the founders and representing a joint collaboration with an American company, Domo, and my colleagues sitting on that side. And I represent both the entities on this platform today. So I would like to start with really some basic things before I talk about the key buzzwords about the ROI, the revenue, the AI, the technology. I think these are, for me, the step two things. Let us really remind ourselves what impact we have if my worthy audience sitting in this summit doesn't act responsibly and bring the real change and become what I call as a bad grandparents. And remember the word bad grandparents. So let us start from really basics. Now, if you see these two slides, the red color may be a very, giving a very connotation, okay? What happens if 1.5 degree increases in the world? The massive map, and I was representing in the famous COP, moving in a massive Mercedes, right? And talking about the biggest leaders going to that summit. And just 10 minutes down the line, took a taxi, and a guy saying, oh, I can't even switch on my AC. I come from XYZ country because I can't afford it. The temperature is quite high, and if I put my AC in the car in the basic taxi, that's going to take off my profits, and that's not sustainable for me. So let me bring your attention back to the real topic, to the real change. If 1.5 degree happens, yes, maybe the people sitting in this room are not impacted. We probably may be privileged. We represent probably the top 5%, top 1%. But absolutely, the 1.3 billion people sitting in other regions, 2 billion sitting in other regions are directly impacting. And that day is not far away when the 2 degrees is being happening in 2050. And this may look like around 26 years away now. This is going to impact even you guys representing the elite class, which is around your grandchildren complaining, oh, my grandparents were the CSOs. They were Chief Sustainability Officers. They tried their best, but they forgot to bring the real change. They were talking. There were massive PR exercises, massive money being spent on creating the strategy, but where is the real change? And let us be a very responsible grandparents. This is the last generation which can make a difference. It's not the next generation. It lies with us. So let me quickly walk you through, and I'll come to the point, what we are offering as a solution. Both the companies forgot about and collaborated, forgot about the competition and collaborated quite deeply, and a lot of engineers working together to solve a fundamental problem, how we can come closer to the real change so we are not stuck in something which I'll present you in a couple of slides down the line. So we are the last generation. So let me remind the key message from this session. If we don't act now, I'm pretty sure we won't be classified in quote marks the responsible grandparents, and that's the impact, which is not going to impact only certain regions, certain demographics. It's going to directly impact even the elites. And again, let me give you a very quick walkthrough how this impact end-to-end. So the economies are shattered. The biodiversity loss happens, the health impacts happen, and that affects the bottom part of the society, and that represents around 90% of the world population. And I think, with due respect to my worthy CSOs and the sustainability colleagues sitting, I think it's not only your responsibility, but I think the biggest share of the responsibility lies on making sure every pound spent, every dollar spent is focused towards the real change and not focused towards wasting that precious pound, which could have meant a small amount of millions for the enterprises, but it would mean billions for the overall society, and that's the impact we are talking about. Now, even if I talk about, take out the primary drivers, now the push is also coming from all the enterprises. The investors are looking for sustainability to increase the valuation, the share price drivers, the government, as my colleague, the host was saying, the carrot and stick policy. The government has pushed the legislation to make this happen, push you guys towards real change, and the mandatory disclosures happen. So all the pushes are coming, even from the consumer side. When I walk down on the Regent Street, I see a protest at least twice a month. The activists standing outside one of the massive fur chain and saying, this was sourced from Canada and we are not going to buy it. So this means it's a clear signal which is coming. Guys, this is no longer a topic of fashion. This is no longer a topic of an option. I think this is the last generation, I repeat, which can make an impact. It is coming from all the quarters, and that is inescapable. Now, this is one of the slides which I wanted to highlight when I said, don't get stuck, right? And these are the actual stats which we have been following, which have been the heart and basis of our foundation of the business plan 5 years back. What we observed, right? If we start at the top, getting the business case approved, yes, many companies face the challenges, but everybody accepts from the multidimensional pressure coming from all kinds of stakeholders, the business case does generally get approved, and we haven't observed those kind of challenges which are very strong impediments. So that's fine. But what we have observed is, yes, the project set some targets, very nice pledges made, shiny PDFs being published. Oh, we're going to go net zero by 2030, 2040, 2050, depending on which country you are. But let us now look at some grim realities. What is happening? 90% of the project gets stuck in step 1, which is tracking and establishing how big the problem is. That is the reality of 90%. And I'm being very generous when I say 90%. When we looked at our survey base, when we looked at with the CSOs, as my colleagues were saying, the host also said how bad your data is, how good the data is. That is step 1. This means to bring that real change, only if you see the 5% people are coming out of that change. And that's a harsh reality. And massive amount of resources are being spent on this cycle, which does not bring the change, and 5% are the real effectors, which actually contributes towards a real change. And we stand today in front of you with my colleagues from Domo, and a shout out to Simon and Lawrence sitting there. We want to reverse these statistics. We want 90% at the end of the chain, not the 5%, and we want to make sure the 5% challenge and the 90% can pass through. We are not saying we will bring the real change. What we are saying is we'll bring you closer to the real change and the shortest possible path by giving you a very unique value proposition, which is what I'm going to present you shortly. Good. So what we have done is our American counterparts and us from London, we have kept our heads down in last 3 years, brought a massive amount of engineers. We brought 4 things together: the platform, the process, the people, and our alliances. We brought these 4 things together and created a very unique execution vehicle, which is highly templatized. This means you can put that into any complex landscape, do the 20 to 30% of adaptation in terms of generation of data. I'm not saying collection of data. Generation of data to plug the biggest challenge, as my colleagues were discussing on the panel, that the supply chain are not able to give the correct data, and we'll give you a very clear proposition so that we can get you over the line towards the real decision making. What is the real change? So we are not stuck in step 1, and that is the proposition in a single sentence: a unique execution vehicle bringing 4 things together, not just a piece of tech. Yes, the piece of tech is core embedded. It has all of your buzzwords, what you're looking for. The AI. I have my colleague coming from Israel, global head of one of the biggest AI, who is also collaboration as part of this project. I also have my American colleagues. So we don't believe this is an era of competition. We don't believe this is about revenue. We don't believe this is about customer experience. We don't believe this is a net margin or ROI discussion. We believe, are we the good grandparents? Are we able to bring the real change? Or we are being part of the wishy-washy PR exercise or gimmicks? I think we chose the second path. It was a complex path. We kept our heads down, and now we are at a stage where we can walk down to any complex landscape and say, we would give you up to 80% of the acceleration. And we have tested, tried, of the largest enterprise in typically top 8 sectors, and the results are phenomenal. And I'm going to show you what does it look like. Just as a quick recap, 3 things as a core coming together: platform, process, people. With our alliances, we bring you much more closer to the real change so that you're not stuck in what I call it as step one problem, which I'm going to come very quickly. This is the complete cycle. So what we have done is we have created a massive single stop shop architecture. The engineers for both the companies sat together, heavily invested, and I'll present you that architecture where I believe the challenges which my worthy colleagues were discussing about the bad data, incomplete data, data not being available, jeopardizing the entire journey, how we overcome this, and bringing the most comprehensive solution on the table so that you don't become part of these stats, the 90% stuck in step one, tracking and monitoring, how big the problem is, what is the status quo, and those complexity make you at the part of the end, the 5% of the real change being achieved, and then being classified as the bad grandparents by your grandchildren that we were too focused in probably different things. So the tracking and monitoring, the planner, these are the key components which comes from our kit. We have developed a very sophisticated planner module which can give you a very guided path how to plan your net zero across all those scopes. For example, if you were a real estate company having a massive portfolio, we are working with the biggest asset portfolio in the UK already. So we are able to pinpoint at the meter point of an asset to that level what the target should be till the net zero becomes a reality. And this all sophistication is being done by our planner module. We have around 15 different types of options which we give out of box so that when you want to fulfill your pledge of 2030, 2040, then it doesn't remain a very wishful pledge. We want to get you closer to the tangible outcomes, and planner is one of the key components after the tracking and module, and I'll give you a quick walkthrough of the whole architecture, how we enable this, and bring you up to 80% of acceleration so that we can all focus on the real change, bring that change rather than getting stuck in step one. The third is the recommender engine. This is again our philosophy of competition over collaboration comes into play. What we have done is we have collaborated with massive players. We have collected thousands of data points on the change points. What a real change look like. For example, all the asset portfolios in UK, we know the attributes, what kind of impact or what kind of intervention we need to do. We have also looked at a massive supply chain as a reference models, and that is where our Gen AI capability has been brought in, where we can walk down to a complex landscape, look at your attributes, and come back with the top 5 changes very quickly, that what change you need to do to bring a meaningful impact, and that is to implement your plan. Once the recommendations comes in out of box, then the interventions, and that is where the ROI analysis is being done, going to the execs, looking for the funding to push that change. That is part of the whole kit. Then the impact analysis, what that change brought in terms of the impact. The actions and projects. We don't want you to get bogged down with multiple pieces of tech, multiple dependencies, multiple frictions coming on. So that's the reason you can manage the implementation of those ESG projects apart from just tracking on the same platform, and that is also one of the key components which comes out of the kit what we are bringing to the world. Then speaking to your scope 3 contributors, whether it's your downstream and upstream, speaking to your tenants, speaking to your suppliers, getting their data in, and there are 7 possible scenarios which I'll explain, which will address the challenges which my worthy colleagues were talking about in their panels, and how we have overcome this. But what we have done is complete the full cycle, one vehicle, 0 dependencies on multiple pieces of tech, get you much more closer to the change, and take out the impediments, the challenges, which could make you part of the stats of 90% getting stuck in step 1. And that is the whole theory and philosophy behind our deep investments, what we have done, and bring this solution to the world. All of your outcomes, whether it's about giving you the full 360-degree view of all of your ESG initiatives, all of the mandates, whether it's to E, S, and G, all of your disclosure standards, if you talk about the CSRT, if you want to talk about the TPT, what UK passed, if you want to talk about the GRI, we don't want you to spend months and months or weeks to compile the data points. Everything stands templatized so that we can very quickly run a basic 3-4 week sprint, get a plug and play, and get you show your compliance so that we all can move forward on the real change. That is also part of the clear outcome. the automated reporting, the roadmap, the strategy part, how to plan the whole journey, and that is where we bring a single execution vehicle, the most comprehensive, the shortest path, considering people, process, platform together, and that is the differentiator we want to put on the table for our worthy audience. So let me repeat the key benefits. It's accelerated journey. We don't want you to stuck with multiple pieces of tech not working coherently and bringing you up to 80% of the acceleration. It covers your full journey. It gives you a single, collaborative, across all of your mandates and best ROI, so that one execution vehicle can help you track everything. And the focus is, remember, the real change, and that has been our driver for the entire business plan, entire investments, what we have made with our partners and collaborators. And our collaboration is growing very fast, and we would also like you to join, and I'll explain what the format is. So in a single slide, I think I would rather spend time on the next slide, which would give you probably much more deeper how we have achieved this, which could give you up to 80% of the acceleration. I was listening very patiently to my colleagues for the previous panel discussion, and the biggest theme which was coming again and again, we don't have data, we have bad data, how good is your data which needs to be, and that question was coming. I'd like to give you an example of one of the biggest Spanish bank customer which we have. So let me give you a scenario. So they have a massive HQ in Milton Keynes. Around 3,000 bankers comes to that HQ, right? Flaunting massive Range Rovers, 1 seat occupied, 5 seats empty, and the mandate is, I want to decrease the carbon emissions for the commute. And now, if it was just as simple as an IT problem, this would have been sorted out by now. The real reality was, the step one, nobody knew who is coming in which car, how many people are coming, what's the sources, and that is where the 90% gets stuck. And if you remember, in our architecture, the first is we have around 2,000 sensors. We plug that scenario where the data does not exist or the data is of bad quality, and I'm not talking of the supply chain scope 3, that would be the summit method which I'll speak slightly later. So what we did, we put the sensors on all the exit and entry points, smart cameras, we could pick up the number plates, go to the DVLA site, we know the engine size, and we ran a very clear surveys on the turnstile, make a big jazz about it. Everybody was very brought into the journey, and that's where the people element comes into that. So within 8 weeks, we exactly knew what the problem was. 99% qualification of the problem. And that is where the Range Rover came in as a clear stats. That was the most popular car with the bankers in Milton Keynes. But since now we knew the problems, and now we knew very well what the plan looked like, what the change we need to bring. We deployed our incentivization frameworks to bring the change. I'm just giving an example of one mandate. The same philosophy is being done, and underlying the powering technology is this one, which comes from a single place. All the key components, what you need for the journey, you don't need multiple components, you don't need multiple techs. Every additional piece of tech takes you far away from the real change, and it derails the path. And that's the reason we brought in our collaboration with the 2,000 sensors. We have around 2,000 connectors as part of the data grabber. We can literally connect to any system in a low-code, no-code scenario, and that gives us a much more acceleration. Then we have the summit method, and that is where the scope 3, when we used to work with for a biggest retail group coming from Dubai, their supply chain sitting in India, Dubai, Pakistan, and if you ask them, guys, even you have a system, and they didn't even, in many cases, it was not even digitized. And that is where the push method comes in. And I spoke and listened to my panel member, he said, the training methods, all of these are deeply embedded, how to push your supply chain to submit the data in case of a non-digitized scenario and still get you closer to the real change. And that's why we have a direct method of submit into our platform. Then coming into the storage, we handle quite large number of transactions. We are taking a data stream from smart meters for one of the biggest portfolio, getting very close to, I would say, near real time. Billions and billions of transactions we can process between our platform so that you are not stuck for the real change, I repeat. And that's the reason we come, data is fully governed. All of your stakeholders, supply chain, your consumer, that view gets everything related to your access. Then the 360-degree view, and that is where you start tracking your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and now scope 4 has also started coming in. Probably that's a topic for a separate day. And that visibility comes in the full 360-degree view. Apart from that, you see a separate block for disclosures. We don't want you to come under the strict policy of the government and spending time and takes your focus away from the real change. And that's why we have invested heavily against 90% of the global standards, be the European standards, be the GRI, be the TCFT, be the GRESP. All standards are templatized so that you can get over with the compliance quickly and bring your focus back on the real change so that you're not just looking forward and complying the standard. That's, again, a massive investment which we have done to ease out that journey. The collaboration is a big piece, and that is where we collaborate with the supply chain, your tenants, your consumers, and bring them part of the journey. Remember the 3 Ps? Not only about the tech. If you think you buy a piece of tech and you're going to bring the change, that never happens. If you don't know the process, if you don't bring the people on the journey, and if you don't collaborate. And that's the 4th pillar which we have found as bringing that up to 80% of acceleration. The collaboration happens on the platform. Everybody's looking at all the same baselines, same numbers, and that is the theory where we can push the supply chain, as my colleagues were discussing about, either by the carrots or by the sticks. But this gives you the full execution vehicle about this. So, and what I forgot about was the predict and proact. If you see in the last 3-4 blocks, that is the big game changing what we're doing with our AI partners. So what we are doing, again, very silently, we are literally scrounging each and every report and finding out a very simple thing. What was the problem? What were the attributes? And what was the change done? And what was the impact? And this is what we call as a reference models. We have built the reference models for the real estate sector. We are building now for manufacturing. The retail is also under construction. But real estate being the biggest contribution of the carbon footprint, and that is what we have prioritized, and we can stand with confidence that we can pick up any portfolio now, push it to our reference model, whether your offices, your sites, your commercial, and we can get you very quickly and say what changes you need to do to bring you closer and reduce your carbon footprint so that you're not stuck in the accounting and then going through a massive survey cycle. And that is where our reference models are being developed. We are not charging for these reference models. The only thing what we're looking for is we all need to contribute to this reference model, and we would open our reference models to the entire audience, subject to you are jumping as part of the collab. Then when you are made a change, you're also giving us your data point anonymously. We are not looking for anything which could identify you guys, but that is the only joining criteria. And we'll very happily share with you our model. Our model is getting trained on, I would say, if not billions and millions of data points being coming on our platform. So I repeat, competition or collaboration. That is where we are changing the game. First, bringing people, process, and platform together. Then second thing is building the reference models powered by GenAI, the latest tech, and giving you a clear capability, first to track in a templatized situation. The planner module comes, gives you a clear direction. Then the recommender modules. And these are the reference models which are powering the recommender modules. What changes you need to do to reduce, how expensive it is, and who has done in the past, and what was the real impact, so that you can make the right decisions. You're not taking the finger up in the air kind of things, and then becoming, what I repeat again, the bad grandparents in 2050, and that is what we want you to avoid the cycle. I think I'm just left with around 40 seconds for my time. So we are in the first floor. If you have got any questions or any things which you want to have ask us about, we'll very happily be looking forward to speak to you. And with this, I would like to say again a very simple thing, guys. Let us focus on the real change. Buzzwords, marketing, that stage is over now. The pledges have been made. Let us start bringing a real change. With this, I say sincere thanks to my audience. And it is an absolute pleasure to be part of this conference. And I wish everyone best of luck, and so that we can bring the real change. Thank you, guys.